I'd like you to meet yourself. Go ahead and clasp your own hands like this. So step one in meeting yourself, I suppose, is determine who you are, your name, and other key markers of your identity. Step two, do an internet search for that name and other key markers of identity. Step three, use a who is kind of thing to find the address of the person who matches your identity, name, and all specs, right? And then, hopefully, that's the same place you live. If it is, congratulations. You're already in the same house with yourself, so it shouldn't be that hard to find a moment to introduce you. If you're not in the same house, repeat those previous steps because you probably got the wrong guy. Usually you live in the same house as yourself, generally speaking. I mean, it's a strong correlation. So friends, good afternoon and welcome to Talking with Famous People. Some people might call it a podcast. Some people might call it a wonderful adventure of learning. Still others might call it that annoying old guy. Talking and talking. But I like to call it my way of sharing Eric with the world. Hi, Winston's mom. Do you know that I'm experiencing some successes with the YouTube shorts a little bit, which is why I keep trying to put those up and sort of get the art down, I guess. The FE one, if FE were a guy, which is like a 9-second short or something of this funny real estate sign I saw near my house, has gotten 2,500 views. You got on the shorts feed. The thing is, some of your shorts will get on the shorts feed, and then if they do, they'll go from regular speed or slow growth to like boom, like 1,500 views. So I've had that happen on a couple of shorts. I had it happen with it's like, the thing is about those shorts is, I could drive around and make those little things like all day long. It would be so easy, Every time I go someplace, I see something. No. FE is not concerned about others' feelings in that way. In other words, an INFJ only gets mad when they accidentally hurt someone else's feelings. You forgot the word accidentally. FE very much has within its wheelhouse the possibility to purposely hurt someone's feelings and to feel as though they deserve it. It's the FI remembering what's really more important to you, right? So it's like, let's say you got mad at somebody who you care about and you hurt their feelings. Well, if you did it on purpose, then you're not that close to them, or you're not an INFJ. One of the two, right? So in other words, if an INFJ is very close to you, they're not going to purposely hurt your feelings. If they accidentally hurt their feelings, they feel bad because they expect and demand of themselves good FE, which, if your FE is good enough, typically prevents the failure of FI. One of the elements of FI is Dulles, you're what's getting in the way of me and success. Okay? Wanting long trousers videos. So it's like harm prevention is part of FI, and caring about somebody and accidentally hurting their feelings is failing to uphold harm prevention, and so that will make an FE tool user very angry at themselves. Just like if my TI is good enough, if I've figured out all the conditionalities of things, presumably, then I won't have ordinality problems. So if I were to apply conditionality to the observed world more, I would say things like, well, I can't do this before I do this because I'm going to have to meow, 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 meow. Or if I approach it this way, if I approach it that way, if I approach it this way, is a conditionality approach to what it's like the transition ground between conditionality and ordinality. And the thing is, ordinality somewhat links to intuition in certain ways. So it's like when somebody's good at chess, there's a much better chance that they're NITE than that they are NETI. And the reason for that is because NETI tries to do what NITE does by knowing, and NETI tries to do it by figuring. And it's too much, it's far too heavy lifting to figure. You can't go for all the possible moves. No, I don't want to hear any facts about myself. I'm not interested in hearing any facts about myself, thanks. We're not talking about me right now, we're talking about something else. What was I saying? I got sidetracked for a second. I don't remember. I lost my train of thought. So, chess, right. The thing is, NITE will sort of intuit out the patterns of progressions without trying to do it all conditionally. If you try to do it all conditionally, it sounds like, okay, if I move my bishop here, then he'd move his meow there, then I'd move my meow there, then he'd move his meow there, then I'd move my meow there, and then okay. Well, what if I move it here? Well, then he'd move my meow there, then I'd move my meow there, we probably TI. I mean, the thing is, you have a lower ceiling, ultimately. Just as NETI has probably the highest ceiling in debate, although INTJs can be great at it if they spend a lot of time doing it, you know. Well, the thing is, if you feel bad for hurting someone's feelings, you are experiencing a negative form of FI, right? Which is to say, or an undesirable form. Guilt, or I guess that's the emotion is guilt, right? You know, so the point is, we notice our sixth slot most when we experience it, when we're engaging in it intentionally in a negative fashion, and that's going to happen a greater proportion of the time that we engage intentionally with TE or with our sixth slot function than it will probably with any other kind of attention, because it's countervalued and we only use it when pressed to use it, and our natures are going to always mean we use it in a somewhat unnuanced way. The thing is, FE is about perception management ultimately, and also about perceiving the identity of others and the deviance from that mean. So it's like a person with strong FE, tool, function, or dominant will be very aware of like where everybody else is in the house, or whether there are other people around, whether they're whatever it is they're doing, no matter how small it may be, like rolling around while sleeping, how much that's impacting other people and stuff, they're ultra aware of it. I'm talking about FE 1 or 2. And doesn't matter what it's paired with. There's this hyper awareness of their own, well, basically about how others are related to who they are. So in other words, when an FE person sees the person, they sort of, without thinking about it much, process how they appear and also have in mind somewhat how they normally are. So if I came on this morning and I were like crying or something, that'd be something that anybody, no matter where their FE was, would probably say, well, what's wrong? Something seems to be the matter, That'd be blunt force enough with the display that anybody could tell, right? But if I were to ask everybody here to indicate to me what mood you think I'm in, you'd probably just say, you seem to be in a good mood, or a normal mood, or a regular mood, or something. Nothing seems particularly extraordinary, Rachel, Gerard, you and everybody else. Man, it is the biggest problem in typology that I have to deal with, really. Which is, in terms of actually typing people, which is, people hate having their TI fully exposed. So it's hard for me to both have a happy client and have a lot of clarity about what slot their TI is in. The only people who don't really like who don't really mind, who want, like, bring it on, are 1-2 types usually. They're excited by the opportunity to show off their depthness of that, But everybody else, I have to walk very lightly in those sessions, with that kind of stuff. I wish people would just get that there's nothing special about verbal reasoning. Like, it's not a more important or less important or more sexy or less sexy calculus than introverted feeling. It's not a better frame of reference inherently for the universe than extroverted thinking or extroverted sensing or any of the other functions. It's just, I think people forget that a key thing I keep saying is, remember where we're doing work and the kind of work we're doing. Where we're doing work right here and the kind of work we're doing is very customized for any TI. And it's very not customized for NI front stack exactly, but you have to have NI as an absolute value. So it's just like, also being able to access both knowledge functions is really helpful. Like SI, NI, SI fourth, NI fifth. I typed a ISFJ last night, and it was really interesting. It was obvious to me that she was an ISFJ right away. ISFJs, it's when I do type them, it's usually really, really obvious, because my mom was an ISFJ. My oldest friend, 47 years, I've had ISFJ. I used to date an ISFJ. So I have a lot of experiential knowledge of ISFJs and how they are and what they're like. Plus, I have a lot of clarity about the NI kind of truths about, or identity qualities of ISFJs. Because I'm SI4, NI5, it means basically that SI for me is inductive logic. It's like, I'll generalize out a rule from an example. But it's not really like that for dominance, as I learned somewhat last night, as I asked her to explain her epistemology to me, and she explained it as, I'll notice something in somebody, and I'll say, that's just like how this other person did that I know, and this is how it played out for them, and so this is how it's going to play out in this instance. So the way I use SI fourth slot is basically as inductive logic. The way she uses SI is basically as equivalency logic, or experiential equivalency logic. So I don't know what else to call that, but to describe it as such, it's sort of experiential equivalencies and the logic that one would infer from that. Well, and that's the thing about SI is its core mechanism is repetition. If anybody wants to better understand SI in general, start there. This core mechanism is repetition, and that's one of the easiest cognitive functions to describe exactly the processes of. The processes of SI are processes of repeating to yourself the thing you want to remember. If it's word stuff, or if it's like an appointment, don't forget, Eric, you got that thing at 3 o'clock. Don't forget. Oh shit, did I miss that thing? Oh, whew, it's not 3 o'clock yet. Okay. Don't forget you got that thing. I don't actually have a thing at 3 o'clock. What if I did? Let me see what this person says here about FI and FE. Michael Bean says, I feel like an FI person but act like an FE person. Could that be something about FI, or am I an FE person? I don't know what you mean by I feel like an FI person, but if you act like an FI person, so let me give some examples of FE people's behaviors and habits, and see if you resonate with these. So, like, FE people will generally, least so in the fourth, less so in the third, more in the second, most so in the second probably, and equivalently about in the first. But you see this active listening thing going on, right? Where the person goes, oh, I see, yes, and cues you that they are hearing you and understanding you as you're talking. So that's one thing that the FE people consistently do to some extent. Now, it's not impossible that FI type might do something like that, but it's unlikely. Like you look at an FI Dom, they're only likely to respond or sort of prompt. Like if I'm talking to an INFP, they don't give me any feedback. This is why they're my supervisor type in part. They don't give me any feedback I can use as I'm talking to them. And the reason for that is after the conversation is done, and I'm done typing them, and maybe I share the video with them privately or whatever, then they spend time feeling how they feel about the whole experience. It takes them some time after the fact to process it. They're converting that SI into FI and inning about it, I guess. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but the thing is, the reason part of the reason why they're my supervisor type is because I'm blind to that kind of approach, which is to say, I will determine how I feel later about what we're saying now. That never occurs to me. Like, I always know how. I mean, sometimes I'll say, I don't know, I have to think about it for a while. If people ask me, like, I wish I could remember this example. Somebody had a good example the other day. I don't remember it. But, and I said, I don't know. I have to think about it more. But I don't remember what it was. But anyway, that's a situation where In other words, I don't want to commit to an answer because I don't know which answer I can defend best. In other words, occasionally somebody surprises me with a question. Doesn't happen very often. It's usually they surprise me with a specific question, like, well, how do you think this applies to meow, meow, meow? And I go, oh, I've never thought about that specific thing, so let me think about it some. And usually I may or may not end up thinking about it more, actually, or not, you know. But the thing is, I never don't know how I feel about anything except in the moment, really. So, like right now, I feel fine, right? Like, how would I describe my feelings? I mean, I guess right now I feel like, what do you mean by macro scale? That's not a feeling, though. That's not a feeling. I say ADHD is what undermines the retention of a task happening later on in the day by playing pranks like, now you see me, now you don't. Hey, what's that on your shirt? Finger flick, gotcha. Well, I mean, ADHD doesn't prevent me from remembering my things. I'm an SI front stack person, so I remember things like I'm supposed to do or whatever later on. Almost always. I rarely forget things I'm supposed to remember, like appointments and stuff. Occasionally, but not often. Explain how TI on the macro scale useful to everyone in the world. Oh, well, it's useful in that regard, TI and FI are both on the same team. They both protect the individual from the group. FI is you protecting your own individual and your own family and your own shit, you know. TI is you protecting the individual conceptually. How's that? In other words, by promoting reciprocity of argumentation, in argumentation, which is to say, if you can use that reasoning to justify something, then so can I use that reasoning to justify something. And then we can check the legitimacy of reasonings by seeing what kind of things they justify. I protect the individual. I prevent things like hierarchical status from mattering or number of credentials from mattering, right? It doesn't matter how many credentials you have. It doesn't matter whether you've got a PhD, an MD, a doctorate in dentistry, and every other kind of letter after your name imaginable. With TI, you have to win the argument. And that means you have to say words that withstand scrutiny, that express things that actually mean things, that that allow you to use terms to do things, to basically make progress ideationally by eliminating things that are wrong. So TI and FI are on the same team, ideally, about individuals, but are never seem to be on the same team about politics. So TI protects the individuals by protecting the integrity of the system, by and large, and FI protects individuals by demanding solvency for things that make people feel bad. So it's like an FI person is likely to say, we've got to do something about homelessness. This isn't acceptable. How can a society like ours allow homelessness to occur? And there's not really a sense of whether or not that the action taken, FI ignores how actions taken fit into larger frames because they're always selfish in some intellectual sense, right? It doesn't. I mean, everybody's selfish in some way. Obviously, I'm doing what I want to do right now, not what I don't want to do. Good, Lauren Cuthbert. You may be The first client of my new business, How to Meet Yourself Incorporated. How to Meet Yourself Incorporated is a business where I facilitate you meeting yourself, because here's the deal. The reason you not yet met yourself, and why it's going to be a little awkward the first time you met yourself, is because you've never been formally introduced. And you've heard all kinds of things about yourself, but you never actually checked it for yourself, because you haven't met. So what you need is a trained, licensed, formal self-introducer. And that's what I am. For the low, low price of only $29.99, that's $29,999.99. I will introduce you to yourself. I will go to wherever it is you live, and I will say, Lauren, I'd like you to meet yourself. And you'll clasp hands like this. Yeah, it's only $30,000. It's a good deal. Of course, if you hire me, Lauren Cuthbert, I think you live in England, so it's going to be, you have to pay for my flight and hotel, plus a limo to drive me around, because I'm pretty important, I'm a pretty important YouTuber. Great, what's your bank details? Send the money to send money here at bank.com. Send money here at bank.com is a good email address. She'd like to meet me, Lauren. Apparently she doesn't have much time left, and she's desperately trying to get me to go over there and type her. Oh, does Deepak Chopra have those kind of demands too? I'd like a bag of Skittles with all the yellow ones taken out, please. I don't like yellow Skittles. If I ever become super famous, I'm going to make ridiculous demands. Like, I'd like you to buy a dozen roses, put it in a vase in my room before I arrive there, then remove one of the roses and lay it artfully somewhere else in the room. If it were possible to know all the circumstances surrounding why two people, one rich, one poor, stole pieces of bread, do you think it could be justified to sentence them differently? Well, sure. Sentencing differently is fine. The point is, if you're going to have mitigating factors in justice issues, it needs to be in sentencing, not in guilt finding. So you find two people guilty of the same crime, they're subject to the same range of penalties. Where you land on that range of penalties should be determined somewhat by mitigating factors. So that's how we account for utilitarianism and justice. We try to eliminate it entirely from the guilt or innocence question, and allow it to modify a uniformly applied set range of possible penalties. Feeding yourself shouldn't be a crime. Do I have a strong opinion about drugs? Yes, I'm very pro-drugs. Sometimes you feel like you can never do them. I never feel like that. I can't remember ever once feeling like that. Well, I would say I would go like more like, not so much more brown. I mean, I get what you're saying, Peter Dentici. I don't exactly disagree with it. I just don't like you applying the word morality to FI. It's more like instinctive humanity. It's to call it morality is to give it a form and structure that it doesn't have. It's instinctive humanity. That if you see something suffering, it causes you to experience something that's awful. It's like, I remember one time my cat in Temple City had her paw stuck in a fence, and it was, seeing her suffer made me just freak out. I couldn't handle it at all. If it had been in person, I probably would have been fine. But, well, drugs aren't an end of regular life. They're just a momentary departure from it, okay? I heard someone say on a late night talk show they and their wife did ketamine in a therapist's office. What is ketamine? I could Google, but your answer will be more interesting. Ketamine is a dissociative drug, like PCP actually, but unlike PCP, it doesn't. You're not up and about when you're on ketamine. The thing is, ketamine is not a good drug at all, in my opinion. I don't like it. I didn't like it. I had a little full of powdered ketamine, and this was a while back, like years ago, but. And I'd do a couple bumps of it or whatever, and then I'd be like, ugh, I don't like this. And then I wouldn't do it for a couple months. And then I'd do a couple more bumps of it, and I'd remember, I don't like this. Well, one night, I went too hard on it, and I went in the K-hole. It was fucking awful. It was the scariest drug experience I've ever had, including the time I tripped balls for like 20 hours in Santa Cruz and watched the clock go 4:59, 5. 4:59, 5. That was a bad experience too. When time kept going back and forward 1 minute, for it seemed like for a long ass fucking time, that was frustrating. I feel like talking every day would make me so depressed. Yeah, the K-hole is if you do too much ketamine, you basically you get dissociated, which means what it's like is I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you can't find yourself. You don't know who you are or where you are, like you know where you are, but you don't know who you are or where to find yourself. It's like you haven't met yourself at all, or something. It's not a fun drug. I don't understand why anybody would think it's therapeutic or whatever. But I guess it helps with depression, apparently. The thing is, I believe that basically there are two kinds of people as far as brain chemicals go, dopamine and serotonin people. I'm a dopamine person. Serotonin people seem to like different drugs in general. I don't have any clear explanation of this or whatever, but it's just a hunch. This is my intuition. It's not really based on anything other than that. It just seems like dopamine people like dopamine shit. Serotonin people like serotonin shit, and ketamine is serotonin shit. DMT is serotonin-y. It's the best serotonin drug, DMT. I don't normally like serotonin drugs. Although, I mean, mushrooms are actually a serotonin drug too, so I really like mushrooms. Mushrooms are the best. If someone does commit a real crime, like an act of violence, then of course, that needs to probably be addressed in some form. Now, does that necessarily mean they should be locked up? Not necessarily. Yeah, well, I mean, the question of stealing a loaf of bread, the silliness of it becomes revealed when you switch that over to act of violence, right? Random act of violence. If you go to violence, you realize that it can be justified as an act of self-defense, but initiative force like that is not acceptable for private citizens to engage in, and thus the line is really clear. With this thieving example that people turn to, there's a neglect of the fact that the person existed before this pressing need to have bread existed, and they didn't address it in a more legitimate way, and they had opportunities to. Read the rest of it. I'm taking it out of context. Okay. Let's see. Well, FI is authenticity, being true to whatever. Well, not whatever brings you peace of mind. It's FI is authenticity in terms of, like, let's say you've got to you told your friend Betty you were going to go with her to the Arboretum on Saturday, and then this boy you like named Jojo, he asks you out on Saturday, and you want to cancel with Jody, which she's a good friend, but you really want to go out with Jojo, and you want to reschedule, but you're afraid if you do reschedule, she's going to get her feelings hurt because you rescheduled last time. These are like FI questions, right? That FI deliberates about and figures out, in that regard, whatever brings you peace of mind. In other words, how are you going to feel afterwards? Are you going to... Being FI smart means maybe being aware that you're going to feel better afterwards if you follow through on what you said you were going to do with Judy, and you say to the guy, can we go out another night or something like that, you know? Maybe that's the FI conclusion, is that it's aware that after the fact you're going to regret that you ditched Judy or something. In that regard, there's a peace of mind issue to it, I guess there is, that I hadn't considered before, but that's because I don't experience FI across time like that. I just experience it in the motion, in the moment. I feel kind of emotional right now, actually. I don't know why. Something about that question made me feel emotional. Or something about my answer made me feel emotional. I'm not sure what it is. I never alluded to that type of behavior being okay. One should not be criminally punished for trying to meet the basic needs. Well, sure. I mean, one should be criminally punished for committing crimes as a means of meeting one's basic needs, right? So I can meet my basic needs by doing some sort of work or being useful for somebody or some other way, getting a legitimate amount of income to feed myself and have shelter, or I could have a home invasion and slaughter a family and take over their house. One of them is okay and one of them is not. And my intention of taking care of my own shit is irrelevant to that, right? Well, here's the thing about ecstasy. Most people who get ecstasy probably don't get really good strong ecstasy. I took it like 5 or 6 times. I only got real good strong ecstasy one time, and I never did it again after that. And the reason was because the next day I was twitching. It was like that scared me. I was like, I don't want to be twitchy. What the hell? No, I'm not offering to help you know yourself. I'm offering to help you meet yourself for the first time. Because what people don't realize is that almost nobody has ever met themselves. Why? Because in order to meet yourself, you need to be formally introduced to yourself by somebody who's qualified, credentialed, and licensed as a self-introducer. Namely me. It costs $30,000. And from that point forward, you will have a certificate that says, I have met myself. Until then, sorry, I'm not going to let you meet yourself. Actually, when I first put this title up, I was thinking about how, like, in some ways, MBTI is a roadmap for how to meet yourself, or cognitive functions are, you know? Like, for intuitives or people who are in favor of reducible maps instead of holistic maps, especially, then MBTI or cognitive functions can provide a way to meet yourself. So basically, like with FI polar and being an intuitive dominant, I don't think I understood myself very well at all until I got cognitive functions. You know, until I found cognitive functions, I don't think I understood myself at all, really. How do you understand yourself if you don't have FI? Well, you understand yourself with SI, but you understand yourself with SI through the frame of FE mostly, or any, and it's just like you're just sort of a performing monkey, you know? Well, I'm only useful when others think I'm being funny or clever or useful in some way. Or worst case scenario, you're useful. Funny or clever is easy, useful is a little harder. But cognitive functions allows me to understand that first, that that's who I am, and second, that that's okay. You know, it's like, in order to be something, you have to not be other things, right? That's the core message of cognitive functions, is that in order to be something, you have to not be something. The rules of how to meet yourself. Step 1. First, you're going to want to determine what your name is and other specific information about yourself, okay? Then you're going to want to Google that. You're going to Google your name and any other specs you have. You're going to find results that link to that person. And once you make sure that it is, in fact, the same person with the same name, same specs, then you're going to do some kind of who is reverse lookup search kind of thing to try to find the address of that person. Now, check your own address. The address of that person and your own address should match. If they don't, repeat the steps I just said until they do, okay? Because if you're not living with that person, there's a 99.9% chance it's not yourself, okay? Just be aware of that. Now, it could be an old who is address, in which case, all bets are off. You could go down the rabbit hole. But that's why you hire a professional like me for $30,000 to help you meet yourself. The best $30,000 you've ever spent is not an exaggeration. It's just an outright lie. Okay, so once you've found your address and everything, what you're going to want to do is kind of peek around the corners, because probably you're being coquettish with yourself right now and don't want to just be manhandled into an introduction, right? So you got to kind of play coy and wait. It's just like a new puppy or something, or a dog, right? You got to let them come and smell you. But you got to just sort of chill, look around the corners occasionally, and let yourself come over near you. Then try to feed it some bread. First, throw it some distance away from you, and then bring it closer and closer and closer. Now, I'll be standing nearby, and once your self gets close enough, I'll have you go like this with your hands. And I'll say, say your name's Bobby. Say, Bobby, I'd like to introduce you to yourself. You have now been formally introduced. You have met. And I wish you and yourself the best of times going forward. And then I give you a certificate. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's a pretty quick ceremony. But that certificate will get you into some of the most exclusive clubs in the world. The Me and Me Club. The I and I Club, the I and Me Club, the Me and I Club, the Me, I and Myself Club, Myself Club, the Myself and I Club, the Myself and Me Club. All of these clubs, you need that certificate to get into. That's why you hire a professional like me to introduce you to yourself. Now, I've introduced Rachel to herself for free because she's my wife. But she will provide a testimonial here. Would you say the introduction to yourself was worth at least $30,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
If not more.
More, probably, yeah. You're probably making money off of it.
All
really.
I think about is myself now.
That's good. That's good progress. All she thinks about is herself now. She's turned into an FI doll. I'm just kidding, INFPs. I'm just a kidding. Don't be mad at me. So I gotta say, I'm a fan of a YouTube channel. There's an actual YouTube channel that I'm a fan of. This is maybe the first time this has ever happened. Okay, that I think, wow, I really like this guy's channel. I like want to watch all of his shit. It's called Tekkit Realm with Dallas, aka Infernus. He's got like 1 million some subs, so he's a fairly big channel, you know. And he does things like YouTube Mysteries Unsolved, like the case of Ash Robinson, who was this like abandoned place explorer, and somebody in her channel said, go to this abandoned place, and then she went there, and she then there was a couple other like really like serial killery videos uploaded that were very short after that, and then never heard from again. And people were like, Tekkit Realm, yeah, I like that channel a lot. That guy is cool, I like him. And, you know, you just don't hear me saying this, right? It's like, I watch lots of YouTube videos, but I don't watch any channels, really. There's not any channels that I follow or I'm excited about or whatever. But I really like that guy's videos. I like them a lot. I think he's as far as I'm concerned, in terms of a video consumer, he's absolutely killing it. And you'll note that, of course, I'm not that interested in content like the stuff I produce. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, you don't really, if you're a quarterback, you don't want to watch other quarterbacks throwing passes, really. You can, and you can probably be very effective in critiquing their styles and maybe picking up a couple of things, but ultimately you'd rather be throwing passes to receivers. Yeah, just search the name. What do I look like, a Googler? That's the Batman's newest foe, the Googler. It's like the Riddler, but he just Googles shit. I will get your goddamn link for you, everybody. Fine. I'm such a pushover. Let's see how my poll's doing. So I asked this poll, which SI matter are you most likely to neglect? Sleeping, bathing, eating, or hydrating? Hydrating is currently winning, interestingly.
Wow. It's interesting that bathing's last, too.
Oh no! I'm muted. Not anymore. I fixed it. Don't you worry, everybody. I fixed it. So, who's Shame? I want to know who Shame is. I want to know what shame is. Shame me for shaming. I want to know what shame is. If you want to know what shame is, come here. I'll shame you. Shame. Shame on you. I want you to feel ashamed of yourself. How many... See, people typically have a fairly strong opinion about shaming, actually. I tend to think it's the appropriate consequence for certain things. In other words, like, if somebody's like bullying somebody else, but there's not any physical abuse, then the proper response is a metaphysical response. That is to say, shaming of the bully. And ostracization until at least the behavior changes, right? Shane, come back, Shane. Don't go, Shane. Come back. I'm gonna miss you. But you're leaving anyway? I'm just watching your back walk away, Shane. This end of this book/movie is so sad. Oh, Shane, don't go. How many of you have seen Shane? Anybody? Anybody? I haven't. But I know the ending of it anyway. Shane sounds like a fake name. Shane's not a name I include in my random shit enough. I'm going to have to now.
How's it spelled? S-H?
S-H-A-N-E. Come back, Shane. Don't go. Says a little boy as Shane's walking away.
Aww.
Shane is the old yeller of Western vagabonds. Don't Shane on your parade. Okay, I won't. I mean, the biggest problem, Elise S, with the criminal justice system, as I've indicated before, is plea bargaining. Plea bargaining basically destroys the mechanism of the criminal justice system for people who aren't at least reasonably well off. So it's like, well, it plays on people's general fears and people's misconceptions about the legal justice system and people's feeling overwhelmed by criminal justice system. So it's like, if a prosecutor comes in and you've committed crime A, they will say to you, all right, well, you plead guilty to crime A, or I'll charge you with crimes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, even though the facts of the matter don't support any crimes being charged except for A. Now, the same thing is true if I'm not guilty of A. But in both cases, I'm likely to take the deal because what I'm hearing is if I lose this case in court, I could go to jail for 20 years for jaywalking because they called it a terrorist act because I refused to take the plea bargain. There's this nightmare case of the thing, and that's why the right to a speedy trial exists, right? So the government can't use that stage of being accused, between being accused and being found either guilty or innocent, as leverage against you. There's this horrible case where this guy refused a jury trial demanded a jury trial, refused to take a plea bargain, and was delayed for 7 years until finally the courts set him free on the grounds that it was a gross miscarriage of justice and obviously violated the speedy trial component of the bitch, no. At least you have to be so about things. I mean, I know I can be a little bit that way too. Don't get me wrong. But I believe the expression anyway is, bitch, please. It would have been a little bit better. It would have been more polite because you would have said please. You would have still been calling Rain a bitch, but you would have at least said please, right? Are you the one who got mad when I talked about somebody being a sassy Latina? You better shut the fuck up, Eric. You better shut that mouth. You better not say that again. Oh. Don't be a sensitive, Elise. Jeez. Has anybody ever said that to you? Don't be a sensitive. If not, today is the first day for you to hear it. There's a little bitch really. Yeah, bitch really would have gone well there as well. Or you could say, Tigger, please. That's my pot of honey. That's a great joke from this short-lived like claymation show with Eddie Murphy called The PJs. He's sleeping and he's dreaming. And he's like, take a bleed. That's my pot of honey. It's pretty funny. On a whim, you are the one who said that feeding yourself is always justified. At least that is what you seem to imply. And after asking you for clarification, I was merely TIing you, Elise. No need to get your panties in a bunch. This is fun. I could be a color commentator for a fight between Rain and Elise. If only the chat would go faster. Elise, counters with the left. Lol, dude. You are comparing your original question, which is probably the lowest class misdemeanor, as bread is what, like $2? God. Versus a totally severe felony if you murder several people? God. I don't blame her for those guys, Rain, if that's what you're saying. If you're saying that stealing bread is the same as murdering a bunch of people, God. I agree with her completely. Why are you, what did it mean you oversharing? What did you overshare? Are you talking about your vaginal blood sploosh splash party or what? Rachel's having a vaginal blood sploosh splash party right now. But you're not all invited. I don't even invite myself to the vaginal blood sploosh splash party. Rachel basically treats her vaginal blood sploosh splash party as though it weren't a party. Amazingly. Words matter. And you can see what's happened here, Rain. You've made Elise S laugh so hard that she's crying. What's a viewing? A viewing is something you can purchase from me. Okay? So here's at least as I can tell you that there may have been some miscommunication as you and he both seem to be accusing the other of the same thing. But Rain's logic is just fine. Better than just fine. I'd say even better than mediocre plus, which is better than regular mediocre, obviously. Better than mediocre ultra plus, even. My body is so beautiful that I charge for a viewing. If you want to view me in person, I will stand on a marble round pedestal thing, and you can walk around and look at me. Okay? I'll wear my YouTube shorts. If you haven't watched my most recent YouTube short called My YouTube Shorts, please watch it and like it, because if you haven't, because it's got a really unusually high percentage of likes on it. I want to get onto the shorts stream, the shorts feed it's called. It's a pretty juvenile pun, really, but I think it's the sort of thing that might do well on the old shorts feed, as they call it. Now, listen, some of you guys who may want to purchase a viewing of me may have special requests like, Eric, can you wear a short skirt? Hey, I'm not an idiot. I know you'd be looking at my skirt if I do that. And you'd be able to see my bloomers. I wouldn't want you to look at my bloomers. For the record, do you or do you not claim that caring for your basic legal needs is always justified legally? Well, I think she's saying it's always justified morally, and therefore the law can go fuck itself. If she's saying that at all, which I'm not sure she is. I think she would agree that there are laws against it. It's not legally justified. But I think she'd say other matters take precedent in the calculus. Possibly. But I don't know. I don't mean to be putting words in Elise S.'s mouth, or anything else for that matter. If you catch me putting anything in your mouth, Elise S., please stop me immediately. I don't know what I'm doing there, why I'm putting things in your mouth. She's saying that if she were a judge, she would dismiss the defendant. You can just go free, because shoplifting a loaf of bread doesn't really matter. I mean, I doubt it would see a courtroom. It's very unlikely it would see a courtroom. Listen, I've already shown people parts of my collarbone. I've shown them my forearms. You've probably often seen my legs, including my knees, maybe all the way down to my ankles. I'm practically nude already. I don't need to undress any further. Sometimes you even get to see my nude skull. This is my nude skull. I mean, it wouldn't see court. They'd just say, like, maybe it would, I guess. But they'd be issued a fine and let go, and then they wouldn't pay the fine. And then maybe they'd go to jail eventually for piling up enough, like, fines and shit. Only friends versus only fans. I'm not wearing my YouTube shorts right now. It's true. I'm not. It's because I'm wearing my other shorts. I was gonna put them on, but I couldn't find them. I don't know what I did with them. I was taking them off when I went inside or something to sleep for a while. I slept for quite a while last night. How you doing, Rachel? Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
Have I heard the Only Cans song? No, I don't think so. Only cans, only cans, only cans? I wish they had an Only Enemies page where all the people who hate me could gather together and I could go hang out with them. Hey, oh, it's called Discord server, right? Forgot about that. Have you heard the Only Can song? It's surprisingly good for a meme. I have not heard it. I'll check it out. I am a fan of memes, meme-related memetics, and memories of all sorts. So, I gotta tell you guys, I'm pretty happy with the results on my Effie, if Effie were a guy short. It's already over 2,500 views. It got onto the shorts feed. And not my first success in getting onto the shorts feed, but not all of the shorts do. Do those shorts go above the knee? Just barely. Just barely.
Ooh la la.
See, this is the knee right here. I use it to bend my legs in the middle.
Oh.
How many of you guys have tried that? How many of you have tried using your knees to bend your legs in the middle part? It's crazy. It's like you can propel yourself in different directions. You can stand up, sit down. It's all because of these wonderful things that I call my knees. If you haven't gotten a knee yet, try it. It's so much more efficient than that weird walk you have to do without knees. The kneeless ones. Now that our regular biological human bodies are being supplanted by things such as joints and knees, in the future, regular people are going to be known as the kneeless ones. Australia's been on draconian lockdown. I mean, well, I think he was positing is what he was doing, at least that's probably. Let's posit the equivalent situation, but with a severe felony. Would you behave the same, is what he's trying to ask. I think he probably, at this point, say, perhaps you're being avoidant of answering it. But I don't really know everything in the world, just most of the things. I'm now convinced Rain has a bakery that has shit security, shit generosity to customers, or maybe the kind of bakery that puts its bread in the street to try out and get those real fumes. I mean, I think Rain is a baker who has been subject to a lot of bread theft. And naturally, he doesn't take it as lightly as other people. You know, it's like, you might not think it's a big deal to just sort of go into somebody's farm field and take one of their pumpkins. But if everybody did that, then they wouldn't have any pumpkins to sell. Banana bread is punny. Banana bread is also puny if you get a small enough loaf of it. You just checked out the Tekka channel, crazy dude, haha. I like him, he's fun. Which book? What book do you want to find? Yes, I saw that thing before. It's like, I don't know. Are you looking for a link or something? To which book do you want? You want The Orderly World of Grammar? Would you like Gospel of the Pantheon? Do you want Exciting Tables and Words about Human Personality? Would you like a book written by somebody else that I own? Oh, Typology book. Well, I only have that old one. I'll share the link with you. I mean, I should work more on the new one, I guess. Or perhaps you mean my little known novella that I wrote when I was in my 20s called The Megalomaniacs. I will get you a link, little missy. A link for you, a link for me, a link to poo, a link to pee, a link that's true, a link that's free, a link from you, a link from me. Thank you. That's a poem for these modern times. As we get more connected, we grow further apart. Okay, next video. You know, it's like, that's just... what am I looking for? Oh, right. Can you please not? Is what I want to say when people do that. That's so annoying. The reason it's doing that is because it's like some key command that turns it off when I meow or something.
Oh.
No, my cuss words aren't being censored. It's because the mute button on the mic is the last thing I touched on the OBS. So every time I touch the keyboard, it turns it off. Or every time I push the space bar, it turns it off. I think that's what's happening. I'm not exactly sure, but it only happens when I like go to a different window or something. No, I wasn't saying any curse words. I was talking about Jean-Luc Picard, my friend. Jean-Luc Picard. Yeah, I know. You're Jean-Luc Picarded.
Important part of the community.
I am writing my English research argument paper about you and typology. Oh, fantastic. That's a great idea. Good job. You are a champion of truth and justice. You represent the American way.
That's gonna be such a good research paper to do.
What would make someone steal a loaf of bread? Answer me that. For funsies? Because they're a bad person? Because they spent their money on beer instead? How about that? Is that a good reason? Or because the opportunity presents itself, the clerk doesn't seem to be watching, it's a little market and they just grab it and go? Crime of opportunity? They're a teenager, their friends dared them to do it. Maybe they have kleptomania. Perhaps it's that specific loaf of bread. They're in the store, they don't have any money, they don't have enough more money for bread, but they see the face of Jesus on the loaf, and they're afraid somebody else is going to buy that loaf of bread before they go get more money. So they steal it, planning to come back and give them the money, only to be caught in the act. How much bread can you fit in your mouth if it's really stolen bread? Stolen bread just tastes like ash and death. How much bread can you fit in your mouth if you stole all the bread? Won't that bread taste like criminal activity? Yes, it will, is the answer.
Yeah.
Some people is not any type of man. Nothing. Honestly is the one who's retarded, but you're the one who's being dumb. Okay. I throw the bread because I wanted it. That's why I throw it. Blah. My mom once tried to steal some lime juice or something from the Ralphs. She's got Alzheimer's disease. And she got out of the car, she was very reliable about sitting in the car. And then one time we left her in the car to go into the store, and she got out of the car. And she walked into the Ralph's, and when we didn't see her come in, we went out back to the car, and we're like, oh my God, where's my mom? Oh. And we went in the store, and she was putting shit in her pockets, and she was over by the grapes and was asking the produce guy something, and we're like, holy moly.
Apparently that's one of the things that she picked up as, I guess, the dementia progressed, because your dad said that she has a thing about
yeah, my dad caught her stealing things a couple. He'd get home and he realized it from the supermarket, she had a couple things in her pockets or whatever. So, it's should they have arrested and put my mom in jail? Well, no. Obviously not. She didn't know what she was doing. She couldn't even answer any questions, It's the point is, bread. Bread is nature's most bready food.
Does that 7-grain stuff count as bread too?
That's just bread with extra crap on it unnecessarily. Okay, regular old bread. You don't need whole grains. You don't need oats on top of it. You don't need little seeds. You don't need just regular bread. It's like when you go to the Subway and they say, what kind of bread do you want? Don't answer them with an answer that they have. Just always say regular bread, because you're trying to make a point that the other bread is not regular bread. There's no reason to have all these different breads. Breadfruit is not bread. But it's a good question, okay, N. Even though it has the word bread in it, it's much, 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 much more fruit than it is bread. Okay, garlic bread is a post-bread endeavor. Okay, garlic bread is not something you buy that's already garlic bread. You buy regular bread and you make it into garlic bread. There's nothing wrong with that. You can buy regular bread and make cinnamon, sugar, butter toast, That's a really good thing to do with regular bread too. You still start with regular bread is the point. You don't start with garlic bread. Now, if you have a loaf of bread that's got like seeds and nuts and twigs baked into it, then you start with something that's not regular bread. And that's what I'm objecting to. I'm not objecting to things you make with regular bread. I didn't time you out. Did I? Who timed you out? Did you get timed out, Rain? I mean, I wasn't going to time either of those two out. But if I were going to time one of them out, it wouldn't have been Rain. So hopefully that statement there gives you some sense of justice, Rain. I agree this is horseshit. Well, yeah. She does have a lot of margin of error afforded to her. You know. How about this? Damn it. Is that good enough? That's about all I can muster. That's about all the punishment for Winston's mom I can muster. Non-bread. Okay, non-bread is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's not really bread, though. It doesn't deserve the word bread. It's just non. In fact, you're adding the word bread to it. It's not called non-bread. It's called non. And it's not bread. It's non.
So what makes... Yeah.
What makes Indian bread so good? Non is Indian bread.
Well, yeah, like, does it
From India.
not have, like... And it's, like, fluffy at parts, but, like...
Yeah, it's got those bubbles on it. Yeah. Why is that shit so good? I could eat that shit all day.
Oh my gosh, with the...
It is the most delicious bread-like bready thing. It's not bread. Oh my god, it's so good. Why is it so good? What makes that so good? Naan. Why is naan so good? It's like the best thing of all Indian food. You can just go to an Indian restaurant and just get that. And just eat that all. And be full of that, you know? Although I do also like some chutneys. I like an occasional chutney.
See, I don't think I've ever had chutney.
It's basically like jelly or jam, but it's savory instead of sweet.
Oh.
Yeah. I believe India made up chutney, if I'm not mistaken. India made up a lot of different kind of food. They made up curry, I think. They made up tandoori chicken. Tandoori chicken's good. I want to get a tandoori oven for my house here. Put it right outside there. What does a tandoori oven look like anyway? I mean, whenever I have it, I'm always like, oh, that was so good. Or I think like, ugh. Depending on, you gotta go to a good Indian restaurant, you know, and get good Indian food. Well, I know chutney's a dip. It's like India salsa, but India does everything backwards. So it's like Mexico does it the normal way. You start with something that's not that spicy, and then you add some spice to it, like a chip dipped into something spicy salsa. India does it backwards. They dip something spicy into something that's not spicy, like yogurt. That's totally backwards, but it's kind of cool, you know. I like it. It's neat. It's good. It's good that India made that up, because otherwise, everybody would just dip regular things into spicy things, rather than spicy things into cool things. I'm going to credit India for inspiring dipping hot wings into ranch dressing.
I'm going to credit them too.
Yeah, India, you get credit for that American tradition of dipping hot wings into ranch dressing, because we're just really copying dipping Indian food into yogurt. Nobody else would have thought of that except for India. Why? Because they like cows so much. They just got a thing about cows. They're like, hey, run all around here and just do whatever. You just see these videos on YouTube. Like India, like I saw this one today where this bull ran into this like Verizon store and
Oh my God.
knocked over a bunch of shit, and they chased it out. They're like, oh, shaking their fists at it. I'm like, well, maybe you guys shouldn't let your cows run around all random, you know? What's up with that? Also, like holes fall wide open in the earth in India all the time. I saw this sinkhole thing this morning where it shows this road in India and it's just slowly collapsing like melted candle into this pit of water. India is pretty funny. Well, I think it's because they've got so much milk. Because the cows run the place, so they obviously got plenty of milk going around. They might as well do something with it. And they gotta do something that kind of preserves a little bit, so they came up with the yogurt. That's my theory. Yogurt and spices preserve food pretty well, I guess. Mix them together, you got double preservation. I will hide that user on this channel. I will hide him so he'll go away. I shall hide that user on this channel, and I wish he'd simply go away. Yes, he is hidden now, never to be seen again, and he'll go away forever. Goodbye, webcam HDXYZ, bro, just go website and jerk off. Who's it? Like, who? Is the chances of him getting anybody from my live stream to go? Sounds like a good idea. Don't put it to do. Is totally zero, right? I mean, like, what in the hell is that? I guess that's the URL, right? Is the thing his name is. But you really have to. Sorry, Jonathan. Sorry. Maybe later I'll DM you on YouTube's long deactivated direct messaging service and say, here's the URL. Okay, well, we know about your addiction to poor internet decisions. I'm addicted to poor internet security. Whatever the most bullshitty thing is fools me every time. What? One weird way I can make $1 million in a minute? Just call this number and give them all my info? The thing is, from my understanding of things in general, that's not generally how one transitions from a non-porn moment to a porn moment. Is by being encouraged by another person. It's like it usually happens when you're watching something normal, and for whatever reason, it's got a lot of cleavage in it and stuff. And then you start thinking, look at all those titties. And the next thing you know, you're rubbing one out. Anyway, foolishly optimistic. There's no such thing as foolish optimism. There's only foolish pessimism. Realism doesn't exist. There's no middle ground. Either everything's going to be great, or the world is falling apart, and nothing in between. You choose. It's a pink link. Is that the... I think you gave me the answer, right? You didn't give me the clue. I don't think you gave me the clue. I think you gave me the answer. James, just by disagreeing, that means you're one of those people who think everything's falling apart. Don't deny it. You hate happiness in the world. Me, on the other hand, I embrace both things. Do you get a parachute? No, you get a paratrooper. When you die in my new religion, you get 40 paratroopers in heaven. In case you need to send them on any missions or whatever. K dies and goes to heaven and gets 40 paratroopers. Hi, K. We're A Squadron. Well, we're P Squadron. The P is for penis. And she's like, ooh la la, I'm K.E. Come over here and play with me. Ooh la, ooh la, ooh la la la, ooh la, ooh la, ooh la 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 la. That's K.E.'s dream every night. She goes to bed. She dreams of 40 paratroopers all jumping from a plane, pantsless with their penises erect, parachuting down to her body that's prone up at an angle like this. And they go, wow, and then the next one. That's the dream she has every night. You have big P energy. Well, maybe you better tone it down a bit. Okay? I'm watching you. Don't you try to be all alpha around here. And I don't mean quadra. How's everyone going to... How's everyone's No Nut November going, though? What day is it? Have I nutted in November? Yes, I nutted Monday, I think. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, I failed on the very first day. But is it no nut or no fat? Rigid frigid? Unbending cold. Ink. That's an inky pinky, though. Boba Fett, not an ink pink. Inky pinky. Well, why wouldn't you want to do that? Is it called Harm Your Relationship Month?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what? Yeah, Jonathan Visanti's right, Boba Fett. You just got schooled.
Oh, no.
If this were a basketball game, your ankles would have just gotten broken. It's No Member November?
Oh, what?
No Member November is a better way to put it. Might as well just say that.
Yeah.
Dulles already had almonds today, so he's out of the equation. It's both known, it's both in the colloquial sense of nutting and in the literal sense. You're not allowed to have any nuts in November. You missed your 2:15 appointment to flick the bean in the office bathroom. Ah, yes, the masturbation calendar. If you put it on your Google Calendar, it'll remind you 30 minutes ahead of time. It's like the Google Calendar really is quite vigorous in reminding me of things that are on it. My phone makes a lot of noise when makes a big to-do of things when it's time for them. Ba-da-dum, bing. You know, it's like it seems to be louder than anything else it does. So I appreciate that. You know, I used to say Google Calendar is not naggy enough. It is naggy enough now. It has to correlate with the amount of syllables in the words is correct. As per Psylocke's chat words there, the number of syllables is indicated by the number of syllables in the ink part. So you have 4 syllables in each one, like Inkatika Pinkatika. That would be Inkatika Pinkatika. Like, okay, so like here's a this is an Inkatika Pinkatika. It's 4/4, and it's a climbing in through a window example. Climbing in through a window example. Inkatika Pinkatika. Kind of a hard one, I guess. This is an example for Inkatika Pinkatika 4-4. And the clue is a climbing in the window example. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the clue is a climbing in the window example. Yeah, yeah. An example of climbing into a window, in through a window, into a house. Climbing in through an example of that. Yeah, yeah. Burglar doesn't have 4 syllables in it. But unless you pronounce it burglar. Burglar is not how you pronounce that word. No. If for it to be 4 syllables, it would have to be burglar. Hamburglar. Hamburglar is only 3 syllables. You know what the Hamburglar did? That's very close, Dulles. It probably works. But I meant fenestration demonstration. So to defenestrate somebody is to throw them out of a window. Fenestrate, therefore, means enter a building via a window. And a demonstration of fenestration is an example of climbing in through a window. A little bit of a hard one. A lot of people don't know the word fenestrate. That's what made it a little bit challenging. But I'm going to key you guys in on, right now, a pretty important thing, which is the best words to use in Hangman if you want to challenge somebody to a challenging Hangman game. The best word to use in Hangman is probably ghetto. Ghetto. Because the G and the H never got. They'll get one of the vowels, maybe the T, and then it gets et. And you can't guess ghetto from ETT. So ghetto's a good one, okay? Another good word for Ultra Challenge Hangman, Yule log. Yule log is hard to get because it's got a Y and a G in it. And an L, which is, those 3 aren't very common. And it's got 2 L's. And then it's got 2 U's and an E. U's probably the last vowel people are going to guess. So, those are the stories of my lives. These are the days of our lives. Like sands through the hourglass, these are the days of our lives. But not your lives. Your lives are plain and ordinary, but these lives that we show on television are ours. My grandma watched Days of Our Lives for every day for as long as I was ever there, you know. And she watched that, and once Days of Our Lives came on, then I couldn't watch TV anymore because, you know, it was the olden days and there was one TV, and anyway, there was nothing good on TV at that time anyways because it was before cable even, you know, when I used to stay at my grandma's house. So it was just like 4 stations, maybe 5 you could get it. You get in channel 28, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9 maybe, and that's it. And then eventually they added 11, 13. But even then, not that many channels. Not that much to watch. It was mostly grown-up content that I didn't want to watch as a kid. Do you have many lives? Buddhism confirmed. I have many lives, but only one life. I will live again and yet die. Ah, wisdom. So that's what passes for wisdom these days, huh? Matter is neither created nor destroyed. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. while concurrently always being created and destroyed. You thought about that? Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, the best argument for some kind of soul or magical stuff like that is, it does seem weird. There's a feeling of wanting to have a holistic identity concept for the thing that no longer occupies the corpse, right? It's almost impossible to conceive, because it's impossible to conceive of a purely biological human that's fully human. Namely, that we have to have both a communicative half and an experiential half in order to be fully human. And because the communicative half necessarily means that every human being is reduced to an identity that is an object of analysis in other people's heads, right? So there's implicit in communication this idea that people exist as identities independent of their experience. So when it becomes evident to us that they've ceased experiencing, it is not evident to us that they have ceased existing. The only reason that people believe in souls and stuff is because it's not conceivable for us to imagine a human being that exists purely as a biological process, purely as experience and not at all about meaning. And because the meanings one creates and associates with one's self comprise the bulk of one's identity, for people who are very anti-experiential, like ENTJs, they all have this weird idea that somehow, someday they'll be able to upload their consciousness to a computer. Of course, it will never ever be possible. And the reason it will never be possible is because a human being is fundamentally the concurrent point moving through time of an intersection between biological experiential process and meaning maker understander, deliberator, interfacer. And it's both of those things concurrently, and to lose one half of that is to no longer exist as a human, right? So if one imagines one's consciousness in another frame, then one imagines being just like you are, except in this weird mechanical body where what is going on here, you know? And that you still have visual inputs, except you now have little digital readouts on it and stuff, and because it'd be cameras, and you still have audio inputs, except now it would like show a waveform, some sort of special effect like that. We imagine these sort of things from the movies and stuff. But while it might be conceivable to transplant a brain, for example, or do a head transplant that makes another person's consciousness occupy a new body, you have to have like you can't feel emotions for real without biology. There's no racing heart, there's no rush of adrenaline, there are none of the biological realities of being a biological being if you're not a biological being. So that's the thing is, for the more intuitive you are and the more removed from your experience you are, the more you can conceive reasonably of existing without your body, because you're not paying attention actively to it, but it's still fundamentally underlying everything you are and everything you do in a way that you just don't understand that well. So it's like, it's a pipe dream to imagine that you can divorce consciousness from a physical body that experiences things. It's insane. You can't, because that half is a necessary part of being human as well. Would you like that opened?
Yes, I would, please, sir. Thank you.
You're a fake gamer. Neuralink is dope. What's Neuralink? I would like to know more about it. The thing is, it does seem to be the case that we will be able to do basically mind controlling machines, like, which is to say, they've got interfaces already that you can by thinking cause the cursor to go over there or over here or do various things, you know? And if that's what you're talking about, I think that's fantastic. I think that's really cool. That's neat. The idea that I'd be able to, but the thing that's tricky about it is, of course, the speed at which I can say, do the kind of work I do, isn't slowed down very much by the interface as it is. Which is to say that even if I can think, I can still only attend to one thing at a time. And that's the fundamental, ceiling on that sort of stuff, is it only makes you faster insofar as you are able to attentionally focus and refocus on new objects faster by thinking about it than by typing or saying it out loud. If I'm doing something like writing, I have to actually write it all out either way, no matter what, right? So it's like, if I could think the sentence, it wouldn't be any easier. I still have to think out the whole sentence. To the extent that thinking is quicker than expressing, it's because it's less complete and it doesn't work as expression. I mean, I wouldn't implant a Neuralink in my brain either. I don't think so. Not until lots of people had done it and it had been. I'd wait for a long time before trying to do something like that. And I don't think I'd want to, but it's not about gaining speed, it's about erasing limitation between real world and virtual world. Imagine that it would also allow you to see images and stuff. Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, the thing is, it's weird. It's like, I can't imagine, like how would my experience of this, how could it possibly be different in a meaningful way by engaging my brain directly? Like, I guess you could imagine that the chat sort of appears here as a holograph in front of my eye or something scrolling down, but I don't want it to do that. I want to be able to look away from it, Would it put me in a virtual room where I feel like I'm on stage talking to people or something? Yeah, okay, well, for games, I understand that. Sure. I get behind the idea of there being an immersive game experience. If I were to imagine an internet like the one that is presented in Wreck-It, what's that movie called?
Wreck-It Ralph?
Wreck-It Ralph, yeah. Wreck-It Ralph, where it's sort of like this giant virtual space that you, for as far as you can tell, are walking around on or zooming around through. And it's totally immersive, like, well, obviously that'd be cool as long as it doesn't make me motion sick like first-person shooters do. Eric, what framework would you take towards explaining there being consciousness? Clearly it has no physical roots, right? There's no need to immediately jump to magical spiritual stuff, is there? Clearly it has physical roots, right? Well, I mean, I think that there's a problem with trying to trying to make one side of the equation cause the other. So what I would say is human consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of a biological being that is concurrently experiential and communicative. It's, in that regard, I mean, the thing is, when you ask questions like how do you frame consciousness itself, you get back to the fundamental question of where we come from, how we came to be human beings, and where we came from. And there's no good answer to that question, unfortunately. There's absolutely no good answer to that. The thing is, one thing that evolution allows us to do, if nothing else, is it allows us to imagine that we can't make any meaning about consciousness teleologically. In other words, we can't make meaning that says we were purposed, we were created or purposed for something. And that's a good starting spot. In other words, we get to chop off speculative meanings that are based on why we were created, which would be the other question, right? The thing is, though, one way or another, as far as I can tell, we certainly didn't. I mean, the thing is, I've looked into evolution a whole lot, and I do not approach this from a creationist perspective, okay? It's like, I assumed evolution was explaining speciation for years, and just operated on that assumption. A couple of things, I don't remember exactly what it was, got me to look into it a little bit more. And I was shocked, frankly, to discover that it's actually complete bullshit. There's nothing there at all. There's absolutely nothing of any validation worth anything about evolution. In other words, everything we know runs afoul to what we think we know about evolution. If you ask most people what causes speciation according to evolution, they'll tell you selection, natural selection. But the funny thing is, even though if you ask Google to define it, it might still tell you that. That's not what evolutionists say in general. It's long been acknowledged that all mutations are deleterious. In other words, the fundamental mechanism of a genome moving through time is to pair itself away from any deviance, not towards deviance, not to reward any deviance. The basic mechanism of Darwinism is sexual selection. That's been destroyed. Epigenetics is something that explains how come genomes get sicker over time. It does not explain speciation at all. And in fact, every example we've ever seen of any species that we've put pressure on to speciate has only created breeds and never actually speciated. So much so that even chihuahuas can still produce viable offspring with wolves. So the thing is, and we also get to note that in all the predictions in which evolution is not responsible for speciation, they all test out true. So what I'm saying about that is, if in fact evolution were the case, then we would see things that have extremely fast generations, like fruit flies, changing over time more than things with slower generations. That's just implicit, right? Now, I understand what epigenetics is, Peter Densigi. Okay, look, epigenetics is a thing where it's basically Lamarckianism. So Lamarck was the alternative theorist to Darwin at the time, and Lamarck's theory said that when a mother giraffe has to stretch her neck a bunch to get leaves at higher branches, then when she has a child, her child will reflect some of that experientially changed genome of the mother. Okay, and some of that turns out to be true. But of course that doesn't account for speciation at all. In no way, shape, or form does the math work. So, in fact, if that were the mechanism, then the only kinds of things that would be actually perpetrated throughout the genome would be basically things that have either a mixed bag of results as a mutation, such as such as, like, what's that called? The thing that African Americans have at a higher rate than other people.
Oh yeah, it's a trait.
I forget what it's called. Anyway, like that thing, right? That thing is proof of epigenetics, that in fact genomes do get sicker over time as certain mutations manage to make their sickle cell anemia, right? So as certain mutations make, and those mutations may have certain kinds of advantages in certain circumstances. Regardless, they don't perpetrate because they're advantageous. They perpetrate because the return to the means mechanisms of genetics are not perfect. That's why the longer a species exists, a species existing for trillions of years, the genome will get sicker and sicker. It won't change. The species won't turn into a different species. It won't evolve. And no, it is the right way to say it. It is the right way. Because there are no non-deleterious mutations. Okay? Scientists well agree with this. So epigenetics ends up happening when experiences, stresses and stuff in life change one's genetics in subtle ways and then get passed on to the kids. And that does, in fact, create more diversity within the genome. If you wanted to be as neutral, sort of normatively as possible, you'd say it makes the genome more diverse, right? But it doesn't matter if even no matter what you put it normatively, it doesn't result in speciation, no matter how you mathematically model it out. It just doesn't work. So the thing is, what we want to do is stop allowing evolution to change the definition of what it is, right? At some point, it's going to have to acknowledge that it's wrong, because Darwinian evolution wasn't about Lamarck. Now Peter Dentici's here saying, oh, it actually now evolution says Lamarck was right. So we've got, I mean, why trust these people who keep changing the model? Because a little while ago, the reason that the Cambrian explosion happened, evolutionary scientists agreed. It was called punctuated equilibrium. Now they've had to throw that out. It's been disproved. Prior to that, they had the nearly neutral theory. They had to throw that out because of the genetic drift barrier. That genetic drift barrier also applies to epigenetics, by the way. So in other words, there's no way for those mutations to enter the population in a way that creates species change without an insane and impossible succession of radical bottlenecks and founder's effects. I didn't misquote what you said. Lamarck, I know Lamarck was the opposite of Darwin. This is what I said, Peter. Lamarck was a competing theorist. Whereas Darwin said natural selection through sexual selection primarily, Lamarck said basically the mechanism of epigenetics, that stressors on the parent get passed down to the kid. But he didn't have the mechanism for it. He correctly framed the problem and said the problem is we need a vector here that shows increasing complexity that we can't account for. He was right. Yes, Lamarck is still a form of evolution, because evolution means change in species over time. Yes, it is. Okay, Peter Dentici. Yes, it is a form of evolution. Lamarck is explaining how species change over time. You did account for what? Who's you? Who's we and you and what? I'm not saying what you did or said at all. I'm saying about people in general, right? Oh, so you're saying we did not account for... So you're saying people finally got around to accounting for Lamarck earlier this year? Okay, so that shows you right now evolution is complete bullshit, right? How can the same evolutionary textbooks that were correct supposedly last year all be still correct with this new admission of Lamarck? So all the shit they've been teaching about evolution heretofore is bullshit? Is that what you're saying? You're agreeing with me that everything they've been teaching heretofore about evolution is bullshit. So why would you think Lamarck accomplished this speciation? Why would you believe that? Why are you still clinging to the notion of species change over time? But the thing is that it suffers from the same fundamental problem. What's the fucking mechanism that explains speciation, given the mathematics of population dynamics? It runs into the same fucking problem. What about the objections that we have to the notion based on the fact that things with incredibly fast generations, we see no more change over time in them than in anything else? It still suffers from the same fundamental problem, right? No, that was not what was proven. It was proven that Lamarck's basic concept of there being a vector of change via epigenetics was correct, that we do see some of that. But we, in no way, shape, or form did it prove that Lamarck explains speciation with this notion. Even Lamarck didn't make that claim. So if it proved Lamarck right, then it proved that in fact we don't know exactly what this vector of increased complexity is to account for evolution. No, Peter, no. I am saying that, absolutely. If evolution were definitively the explanation for speciation, then that change over time would have to... so humans make the claim now that epigenetics are responsible for speciation, right? Which is exactly the opposite claim that they were making a couple of years ago, right? I get that science changes over time. I'd point out that evolution, quote unquote, has changed its mind multiple times and still claims to be a correct theory about something. But if they're still discovering that their fundamental mechanism was wrong, that's not a theory, that's a clusterfuck of failure. There's no reason to cling to this ridiculous notion of evolutionary science. Yes, we can explain genetics. We can explain variation some within a species because of genetic reasons. We can explain breeds. We can put pressure on. We put pressure on a species genome to deviate from its mean, and take that pressure off, it will return to the mean. These things are all well established, so it does not account for speciation at all. Also, the math doesn't work out. If we're just epigenetics, we can measure the amount of change in, say, the human genome via epigenetics over the course of human history that we know, and we see minuscule, teeny little changes over the course of tens of thousands of years, okay, or 100,000 years or whatever. And yet the Cambrian explosion, when apparently, supposedly we evolved from mush to human beings, was just a few million years. So we can do the math, right? We can think. We're not stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense with our observations. It makes no sense with our hypothetical tests or our thinking tests, our thought experiments, right? It makes no sense with our definitions. It makes no sense that a theory that purported to have a certain mechanism change it not once, not twice, but 5 or 6 times and still claim to be right about something. Can you think of any other theory? Did Einstein keep updating the theory of relativity? Well, actually, no. My bad. It's EMC cubed. My bad. Oh, gosh, I got it wrong again. It's actually F equals MC cubed. Oh, my bad. I got it wrong again. At that point, he doesn't have a theory. He's just stumbling around and groping in the dark. Right? He's just stumbling around and groping in the dark. So at that point, you no longer credit evolutionary scientists with being people who can make good decisions about what the cause of speciation is. You acknowledge that these fuckers have an investment in this word that doesn't mean anything. And you be a serious human being and intellectually honest about it. So that's what that is. The genetic drift barrier is the same thing that prevents genetic drifts, quote unquote, from impacting species dramatically, is implicit to all evolution, which is to say, in any mass scenario, as soon as a population gets above a certain size, it doesn't matter what change in any individual occurs, it's not going to impact the genome as a whole very much. The larger the population, the less any individual deviance can. Definitionally, necessarily, unavoidably. I mean, the thing is, but here's the difference. I said at the beginning, I'm trying to explain something. Okay? I didn't say I have the definite explanation. I still don't say that I have the complete full explanation. And I went through a couple of attempts, and not just I, but we in general, negated these theories, quote unquote, models, whatever, because they didn't work, right? I didn't replace it with something other than cognitive functions. I just finally got the actual mechanisms of the idea down right, okay? What evolution is doing is saying it's cognitive functions. No, it's Big Five. No, it's IQ. No, it's yeah. That's very different, right? Very different. Oh, at first it was gradualism over 4 billion years. Then it was punctuated equilibrium. First it was sexual selection. Then it was founder's effect and bottlenecks. Then it was punctuated equilibrium. Then it was the neutral theory. Then it was the nearly neutral theory. And now it's epigenetics. Those are all wildly different mechanisms. Sorry, that's not equivalent at all. I was incorrectly trying to, I've been trying to get the correct model, and I got it right finally, right? But I didn't, it was the correct model about natural selection as sexual selection. Before I had misunderstood some aspects of sexual selection and gotten it wrong, but I finally got it right. I didn't change the fundamental mechanisms from cognitive functions to something else. I just got it more right. That's how the progression of something like this works, right? Once I got it right, now it doesn't change. I haven't changed it for a long time. And I explain it, and I'm right about it. And the reason I don't change it is because it's right. It doesn't need to change. Once something's right, it doesn't need to change. What I'm saying is evolution has been insisting it had the right explanation, okay? Not just the right basic gist, and we're just trying to work out the details, but the right explanation for since it's begun, and that explanation has kept entirely changing. The mechanism has entirely changed. So at that point, you've got to get rid of this idea of increased complexity over time in a genome. You got to say that is not responsible for speciation. There's too massive a pile of evidence against that notion. And of course, no matter what I say here, you have not responded to any of my observations that are very important, which is, if it does in fact happen over time like that, why do we not see more change in species that have very fast generations than we do in species that have slow generations? It's a simple question. It's called the beauty of a thought experiment, right? The beauty of conditional logic with extroverted intuition. We can know for sure that evolution is bullshit. How? Because we know the total amount of time in which all these species came into being, the Cambrian explosion, equaling million years, not a lot of them. And we can measure back our own time, at least 10,000 years, maybe 100,000 years, etc., right? You have data that represents speciation. Okay, but the thing is, instead of trying to get into the node, right? You're trying to say, listen, I'm gonna present you a very complicated argument about how this could produce speciation in certain circumstances with this species, or how we pressured it to speciate sort of in this way, or whatever. And that's all well and good. But if you were correct, you'd be able to respond to my observation. Why is it that we don't see more change in species that have more generations, faster generations than in slower generations? Okay, but Peter didn't teach it. I mean, all species maintains semi-local populations. Like, if I have a local population of fruit flies and I pressure them, I can never make them into anything but fruit flies, no matter how localized the population. So in other words, we've got your bottleneck, we've got your founder's effect, we've created it artificially. Why can't I make anything but fruit flies? And certainly it is the case that humans, no, we've tried everything, Peter didn't teach. Of course there's pressure on the ones that don't change fast. The thing is, by selectively breeding, we are maximizing that vector in ways that nature can never maximize, okay? By selectively breeding, we're picking exactly ones which have a certain trait, all of them, and none of the ones that don't. That's 100%. That's much higher than any natural phenomenon could ever pressure, right? Selective pressure. Selective pressure. You're saying, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying. Never mind. I got what you're saying. You're saying that the pressures of the environment cause epigenetic changes, right, in individuals, and these get passed on. It still doesn't answer the question, why don't we see more change in more species? So what is it about, but the thing is, Peter, you've got to acknowledge that no matter what we do in terms of traits, whether they're epigenetically expressed or genetically expressed, we can maximally attain that selectivity more than nature can by choosing at 100% rate. Okay? So it is true that certain experiences have to be experienced to have that epigenetic change. Note, like mutations, all epigenetic changes are fundamentally deleterious. There are no positive epigenetic changes. There are only nearly neutral ones. So it's important to remember that, right? Don't forget that, Peter. All epigenetic changes are deleterious. They're all responses to traumatic stress. So once we remember that, we recognize that there's no good complexity to emerge from epigenetics. So, that's just how it is. There are 4 major variants of speciation: allopatric, periopatric, parapatric, and sympatric. Of course we're good, Peter Dentici. We could argue. You can argue with me about evolution all you want. Listen, after this conversation is over, after the lecture is over, I'm not going to remember arguing with you about evolution. Okay? I'm not going to worry about that at all. That's not going to bother me. You and I are cool. We're always cool. You're not. You are pushy. Like, you send me your Enneagram shit, but that's fine. I respect that in you. You're pushing in an honest way. You're an FI person, obviously. You're super FI. And I have respect for FI. I don't disrespect it. I just typically run afoul of it because people are using it in ways that interfere with my ability to use my tool function, I guess. But in fact, there are no variants of speciation. We've never seen any instances of speciation that meaningfully represent any understanding of where species come from. So the thing is, let me get back to this issue of framing consciousness. So the advantage of evolution is it says, well, what if we have to frame consciousness without linking it teleologically to a creator and the purpose from that creator, right? So that's the advantage of the evolutionary frame. Well, yeah. Look, can we just agree that both that being a moderator is a thankless job and mostly going to elicit complaints one way or the other, either not carrying a big enough stick or carrying too big a stick, and also that tyrannical arbitrary moderation is not desirable. Let's just agree on both those general principles and move on from there. That's called diplomacy. That's called I like both these people. That doesn't happen very often, Usually I don't like both the people. In which case I'm usually not diplomatic. I'd be like, yeah, Rain, quit being a tard. Or vice versa, So, that's what I would say about it, okay? Just accept my diplomacy, even though it's not satisfying, okay? It's like those sawdust biscuits that starving people in World War II had to eat, or maybe it was World War One. They were filling, but they didn't give you any nutrition. That's what I'm trying to feed you right now, Rain. I want you to take a big heaping spoonful of it and just taste the flavor, okay? Just taste the flavor and say, wow, it's better than no food. And just don't realize it doesn't have any actual nutrition in it. Elise S., are you sick to your stomach? Are you getting motion sick? Do you want to ride in the front seat? We gotta stop, guys. This car smells too much like puke. Now we're all gonna start puking. Thanks a lot, Elise S. What did you have for lunch?
That kind of makes for a funny scene in a movie, though.
Yeah, it's kind of gross scene, though. It's like SI stress.
Oh, yeah, you're so right. Oh.
Elise S., did you have like wheatgrass lettuce shakes for lunch or something? That is the most chlorophyll I've ever seen come out in liquid form of a person's mouth. It's a lot of green. I'm just glad you didn't have spaghetti. That's gross. The vomit, it's got spaghetti in it. Because people don't really chew their spaghetti that well. You know that if you've ever thrown up after eating spaghetti, because you still have whole strings of it. It is a good idea. It did instantly stop the debate. If I think that you think that, like the discussion is damaging the relationship or something, then I don't care about the discussion that much. If it's expressed as like that, right? If it were expressed like, you mad bro, then I'd be like, fuck you, yeah, yeah, is what I'd be like. That's what I'd be all. I'd all be like, and then I'd be like all like that. Mom's spaghetti. Palms are sweaty. Go and get Jacob and Betty. We're off to see the telescopes of SETI in its search for extraterrestrial life. The end.
That's nice.
I don't want you to think that I care as much as it came out. Okay, I won't. I don't think you care. I want you to know that I don't care if you care. Don't worry. I don't think you care. You're cool. You're still cool. Okay? You can still sit at the cool kids table. We don't care over here. If you're over here with us, sitting with me and Rachel here, you better not care about shit. Alright? Because that's so dorky, caring about things. It's like that South Park says. Because being an activist is totally gay. So true. So true, Saving the rainforest, do. If you haven't seen that episode of South Park, it's a classic. It's an old episode. But its core message that I took away from it, that being an activist is totally gay. I think it resonates as a universal truth. One of the few universal truths that there is, really. It's like, we can't come up with universal moral truths or aesthetic truths that are positive moral truths or generally universalized aesthetic truths in ways that communicatively test. But we can test that one. And it passes the test. Yeah. All right-thinking people agree. Bro, are you being an activist right now? I am totally cringing. Please stop being an activist. No! Don't join ACT UP.
You know what they need? Like, you'd be great for the award shows. For when, you know, the people get up there and they start with their activism, they can cut to you. Your reaction.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to be an activist, then Piss Offerson, you make a good point. I'll give you a pass if you almost starve yourself to death. Then you're serious. You want to be an activist and me not shit on you? Be like that monk in the Vietnam War who lit himself on fire. Your sign-carrying suburban nonsense isn't going to convince me of anything. Justice now! All these white women marching down to the white college girls marching down to the Compton police station demanding justice for some guy. It's like, get the fuck out. just get the fuck out. What are you doing here? The thing is, of course, I'm a big believer that we should have, and it is good that we put a lot of pressure on police departments to stop shooting people randomly. But, you know, it's like, I guess I want my activism to be naturally occurring. So, if I see some bullshit going down, I'll go up and be like, hey, what's going on here, you know? That's naturally occurring activism. And I want my politics to be free of emotion, as they ought to be, because they're political matters that affect everybody. Yeah, that kind of shit too, right? No, at least ask, all that kind of shit is bullshit. But what's it all predicated on? It's predicated on laws that can be arbitrarily enforced. So, the thing there is, when you have traffic violations, instead of some other mechanism, you have cops pulling people over, then they can either let them go or not. If they let them go, nobody complains. If they don't let them go and give them a ticket, they can't really complain, because the thing that they would complain about is the fact that the cop let the last couple of people go. He didn't treat everybody the same. Anytime you have a law that works like that nobody complains when it's not enforced, those laws produce unjust outcomes. And then the mistake we make is thinking the cops are the problem, or the outcomes are the problem, when it's the laws that are the problem. Eric, can a non-contradictory legal system say that sentences are based on the principle of proportional punishment and simultaneously not have a death penalty? Sure, because there are things that are proportional to death that aren't death. So there are plenty of ways one could imagine a punishment worse than death, and there's no reason to think that life in prison is necessarily more proportional with murder, or less proportional with murder than the death penalty. More importantly, things that subsume the legal justice system itself would seem to be inherently invalid. And the problem with the death penalty is it prevents the legal justice system from intervening or having a say any further in the matter. And in that regard, it shouldn't be legitimate. Because the law shouldn't be able to remove its own authority over things. Like, the point is this. If there's a law that says you can't do armed robbery, then the agents of the law are tasked to enforce that law uniformly. And we have good reason to believe that they will, because if I'm the victim of an armed robbery and they're not investigating it, or don't seem to care about arresting the guy, I'm going to complain, right? When we have these kind of administrative laws like traffic infractions that encourages people whose job it is to catch criminals to engage with the general public. Now, if cops were only dealing with real criminals, people who were murderers, rapists, armed robbers, things like that, and they got a little rough, well, probably there wouldn't be that much complaining about it, right? The problem is they're dealing with all kinds of people who are not criminals. They're dealing with regular citizens who have simply run afoul of various laws. And that's where the problems come from, is we shouldn't criminalize things that aren't crimes against people, property, or potentially the state, but we can't define that too broadly. Yeah, that was my farting. I also lit it on fire. I didn't want Rachel to have to smell it, so I lit it on fire.
Yes, he's very romantic like that.
I mean, I think that with current technology, we can avoid pullover traffic enforcement with, well, I mean, first of all, the most effective way, if we want people to go more close to the speed limit, for example, the most effective way to do that is to actually put up the signs that say, like, this is how fast you're going, and that if you add a frowny face or a smiley face, it's especially effective. That people's desire to avoid a frowny face will cause them to slow down more than having a cop there. Well, it's like, it's kind of crazy, because with the cop, you run this simulation in your head. How much faster than the speed limit am I going, and how much faster than the flow of traffic am I going, right? Because you're putting onto the cop an awareness of the circumstances and assuming they're making the decision accordingly. That if you're going the flow of traffic, if everybody's going too fast, there's not really any reason to speed up, to slow down. But with the sign, you see it coming up there, and you don't want to get the frowny face, and there's no avoiding it. If you're going over the speed limit, you're going to get it. You know, you've driven this route before, that you're going to see that goddamn frowny face if you're going over 60 miles per hour, and people will consistently slow down for it to avoid their frowny face. It's way more powerful, it turns out, than traffic enforcement. But the thing is, there's a lot of other solutions we can have to traffic violators besides police enforcement pulling people over. So if you were to have an automated system that sort of tracks people's speeds and takes pictures of them like they do with the cameras, it doesn't have to be very close to the speed limit. You know, you could say, look, we're going to be realistic here. We want to target people who are going over 95 or something. In the dead of night, sometimes, you know, like California's Los Angeles speed of traffic, when there isn't traffic, is like 85 on the freeways. It's ridiculous. It's so fast, you know. So you'd want to set those speed things high, but it is true that if someone's going 120 in their Ferrari, you know, at that point, take a picture of it, give them an automatic ticket, and or dispatch the cops to pull them over. But you don't want to get into a high-speed chase, you know. Yeah, minor traffic violations escalate into huge situations where you have this guy walking backwards with his hands on top of his head and gets shot anyway, you know. It's ridiculous. And it's absolutely the case that when you've got drug enforcement, you've got a new problem with. As soon as you add drug enforcement to law enforcement, you've got a new problem, which is, well, how do we bust criminals where nobody's complaining about their crime? So normally we know where the criminal is because somebody calls us, help, there's a criminal, come get him. And we come and get him. What do we do now with these criminals? Because nobody's calling to complain. Nobody's calling to say, my neighbor is in his house on drugs. You know? So, what do? Well, then they've got to figure out ways to interfere with people who are engaging in consensual exchange of things, basically. Like, I'll give you money, you give me drugs. And both parties are fine with this exchange, and then the police come and say, well, you can't make that exchange. You know, that's when problems happen. But the thing is, you can also see that in terms of, like, when localities take too much authority, there's various there was weed stores that kept opening and getting shut down in Pomona when I used to live in Laverne. It's like, will you stop shutting these stores down, Pomona? I'm just trying to buy some goddamn weed. But of course, they didn't allow legal pot shops in Pomona, so people set up these gray market ones. And the thing about those gray market things are, they invest in a few months lease money or whatever for the place, some place that's available for rent or for lease or whatever, pay a few months and set up shop. They have some subtle signage like their number is big and in green or something, a little bit bigger than normal in green, and maybe that's all the indication they have. And they get a little bit of word of mouth. Maybe they're on weed maps for a week, then they take themselves off weed maps and they do business as long as they can until somebody shuts them down, and they make plenty of money in those few months. And their hope is, of course, they last long enough that they make enough money to cover the amount of money they lose on the weed that gets seized when they finally do get busted. That's basically the business model as far as I can tell. Some NFL player was going 156 miles an hour while drunk and killed somebody. Hey, I'm glad I don't drink alcohol anymore. Alcohol makes a person make bad decisions.
Yeah.
Whereas this PCP I've been smoking is doing wonders for my decision making. It's like if we could just get people to replace their drinking habits with a solid PCP habit, we'd be a much happier America. Put down your beers, America, and pick up that PCP pipe. Or whatever you smoke it out of. I don't actually know how to. I've never done PCP. I don't know how to do it, so I have no experience with it. I know that one way that people used to do it when I was a kid, I heard about it, was they dip a cigarette in it, and I just made a liquid form of it, and they call it a super cool. But I never smoked one. He lived, obviously got released from his team, more likely to go to jail, more likely than not going to jail for decades. Well, that's unfortunate for him, appropriate, but do I like to get wet? Well, when bathing, yes. I tend to bathe in water instead of gaseous or solid substances. Sometimes I'll bathe in champagne. I'm feeling like a stock market wolf on Wall Street. I bathe in champagne and Doritos. I got this one video. Oh, it's for Leggy Lady, where the last picture of it, there's a lady who's taking a bath in Doritos. She's got her leg up like all like, hey, but her bathwater is all Doritos. It's like, who took that thing? Who decided to take that picture? I want to meet those people. It's like, that was a good idea. I am impressed with your decision making there. That's good thinking. Now do macaroni and cheese. You saw my angry clip? I don't know what you're talking about. Perhaps you're talking about host Eric yells at people? That's a good video. It's a video of clips of me yelling at people.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it's classic. You should check it out. Nalayak number 1? Or is that NO1? Is that nitrous oxis? What do you call nitrous oxide with ozone instead of O2? Nitrous ozone? A bath that also serves a snack after? Sign me up. You know what's fun to do is take a bath with a cold beer next to your bath. For me, it's non-alcoholic beer, of course. But I did that last night, and it was satisfying. Your outside of your body is all hot, and then you drink this cold down your throat, and then it goes into your belly. It's the opposite of what the normal experience is, where it's cold outside, and you eat something warm, and it warms you up, and you feel good. I like SI. Boudoir. Boudoir photography. Welcome to my boudoir. Let me get into something a little more comfortable. I've got the patchouli over here. I've got some incense burning. I've got incense, wine, and candles. Like the super freak. She has incense, wine, and candles. You know, Rick James originally wrote that song about me. The original lyrics were, he's a very kinky Eric, the kind you don't take home to mother. He will never let your spirits down once you get him off the street. And I said, hey, Rick James. I said no. No means no, okay? Now you're starting to sexually assault me with your words. And then Prince wrote Darling Nikki about me as well. It was originally Darling Eric. I met a guy named Eric. I said, the original lyrics, because Prince said it, it wasn't me. I said he was a sex fiend. I wanted to catch him masturbating in the hotel lobby to a magazine. And then it was all about his fantasies from that point forward. I said, look, just Prince, first of all, this is the 80s. That song's not going to do well if it's super gay. So make it more straight. Talk about a girl. If you want to talk about a guy, give him a name like Nick or Nikki or something. And he's like, okay, I'll go with that. NO3 is nirate. Nitrogen oxoanion. You don't want to breathe that, do you? Does that get you high? I don't think so. Nitrates? I think that's what gives you a hangover on wine, right? Stop giving me nitrates. They're making me feel like shit. Apparently those things are bad for you in the red wine. I don't drink any red wine anymore. The funny thing about red wine when I used to drink alcohol was it's the one thing where like quality matters a lot. Like if you get really good red wine and you drink that and you don't really get hungover, but if you get cheaper wine you get like super hungover. So, but who can afford to not get hungover? You know, you have to buy all these $25 or $30 bottle of wine just to not get hungover. Well, that's not a very sustainable alcohol habit, is it? What UB40 song?
Red wine.
Oh, that UB40 song.
Yeah.
Was that even written by them? Is that a cover?
I think it was a cover.
That's the only song anybody knows by that band is a cover. Great job, UB40. UB sucky, more like it.
Oh, yeah.
Pass the duty to the left-hand side. I like that song. That Pass the Ducci song. That's a good one. It's like it sounds like it's sung by a kid, you know.
I think it was. There must have been a kid, right?
Is that?
Maybe not.
Could have been a girl with a boyish voice. Could have been a man with a voice like the high singer in Boyz II Men.
Yeah.
He's got a very high voice.
Very high voice.
He gets way up there.
Mm-hmm.
Probably he's castrato. I wonder if anybody's checked that Boyz II Men guy if he really ever did become a man. He may still be a boy. That title may be a lie or a secret reference to the fact that the guy who sang really high never did become a man. He was castrated as a boy to keep his voice pure and true. Like they used to do in Italy. It was an honor, apparently. Oh, thanks for the honor. Fantastic. Just what I wanted. To be a boy forever. Like my Peter Pan dreams finally coming true, except without any sex. You know, I had a beautiful voice as a boy, apparently. I'm glad they didn't castrate me. I was the second best singer in my boys' choir. Always second to Lauren. He was the one, the golden-haired child, you know. That Lauren. And I was second. Always bridesmaid, never the bride. Who's going to get the solo this time? Oh, Lauren again. Fantastic. Lauren's going to get the solo. Again. Oh, Eric, you can be understudy. Fantastic. Thanks. Just what I want. Sit on the bench again, coach. Then when I do get a solo, I'm flat, you know. Yeah, Lauren was a he. This Lauren I'm talking about was a he. It may have been spelled Loren. I'm not sure. This close, Karma Spemp. This close.
Wow.
What happened was the Vatican heard about my beautiful voice, and they sent some priests over with a couple of sniffers. And my mom and I hid in the basement until the demons that in our house chased them away.
That's very smart.
Fortunately, we got the non-exercisable ones, so they weren't able to use their magic powers on them. Might have been... No, it was Lauren. His name was definitely Lauren. But it might have been Loren. For some reason, I think. I don't know. Or maybe it was like Laurent, but we just called him Lauren. You know, I don't know. It could have been like Laurent, but we called him Lauren. I'm not sure. I don't really remember how it was spelled exactly. But it was definitely Lauren. It's funny, I had never even thought of it being a girl's name until you guys just mentioned it here. Because as a kid, you just accept that this guy's name is Lauren. And if I had questioned its boyishness at the time, I probably addressed it at the time, right? Like, why is your name Lauren? And he said, whatever he said. And I just thought of him as Lauren from that point forward and didn't question it any further. And then now that you mention it, oh yeah, Lauren's a girl's name. Why was he named Lauren? I don't know why he was named Lauren.
There's Lauren Michaels.
Oh yeah, there's Lauren Michaels. What about that guy? I hear Lauren Michaels begun a new program where he's going to castrate the funniest SNL cast members. In the castrato tradition.
Wow, that's castration.
Yeah. He's going to spay the women.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Spay the women?
And neuter the men, yeah.
No. And this is not okay.
Easy transition name post castration. Hi, Iona Cassidy. You're on a Cassidy. What's a Cassidy?
It was since mom. Is that said? Yves Saint Laurent.
Lol. Yeah. Look, I put a piece of tape on the high E string so it won't buzz there anymore. I own a Cassidy and you own a Schwartz. We own a couple of boats. Sail across the deep blue sea with me. I own a Cassidy and you own a Schwartz. We together wearing YouTube shorts. And if you don't believe me, it's time to go. I really want my YouTube Shorts video to enter the YouTube Shorts feed. I really want it to do well like my If Effie Were a Guy video. Because, why? It's so hilarious, that's why. It's it's a hilarious pun turned into a YouTube short. Yeah, 100,000 million years ago, time ran slow. Nobody at the show placed those slabs below and let them go. They will start to grow. More years ensue and tears gnashing through. Holy slabs coming to view. Unchangingly true and eternally new. But when the slope appears in charge today, options at large show other ways. Give each a chance now, once quick to check, but don't get caught standing on deck. The slope presents a fork. It's not easy stopping short. Too far along to turn around. Perhaps the better course was headed ever north. Now there's a bitter fourth enemy ground. It was 100,000 million years ago. Time ran slow. Nobody had to show. Place the slabs below and let them go. They will start to grow. More years ensue. Tears gnashing through. Holy slabs coming to view. Unchangingly true and eternally new. Though when the slope appears in charge today, options at large show other ways. Give each a chance now, once quick to check, but don't get caught standing on deck. The slope presents a fork. It's not easy stopping short. Too far along to turn around. Perhaps the better course is headed ever north. Now there's a fitter fourth enemy ground. It was 100,000 million years ago. That's a long time ago. And 100,000 million years ago, human beings were frogs. They just hadn't evolved yet. I mean, they didn't exist? No, they were still in a frog proto-state. Is that different from not existing? Very different. So different. Gerald has a thought. Gerald has a lot. Gerald has a plot to get the margarine taters tots. He's got a good idea for a name-changing business. Thinking now about what he'll call Christmas when they hire his firm to change that name. Gerald always thought there'd be chance enough to return to the work I left rough. He'd get back to it eventually, but his visions piled up and his plans would interrupt all the work that started off so hopefully. Now his mind is back on his business, thinking of changing factless to listless. So how all the people would change his name. And Gerald knows he understands ever more clearly now. He won't provide explanation regarding the why or the how. He'll see you, I know you, from inside your heart. Exciting, delighting, Gerald plays his part. But Gerald still knew there's too much to do, and he drops time in the underview. Too much to rebut, so where now and what? Too much time spent nitpicking the skew with you. Now Gerald has a thought. Gerald has a lot. And Gerald has a plot to get the margarine tater tots. He's got a good idea for an name-changing business. Thinking now about what he'll call Christmas when they hire his firm to change that name. Gerald has a thought. Well, you know what's funny is that this ISFJ I typed last night, she had been typed as ISFP by both Megan Lavoda and Harry from Cognitive Personality. It's like, how do you not see? Well, I mean, both those two people, Megan Lavoda and Harry, are NI types, and neither of them is good at recognizing SI, because her SI was thick as butter on a biscuit, which is pretty thick. Thicker than you'd think. This girl, this lady, this nurse lady, she was in nursing school. She didn't want me to record it even, at all. Not even to share with her privately, so I'm not even going to say what her name was. So I'm assuming she must be kind of like privacy freak or something. So. It's a very cloudy day in Los Angeles, and today we run out of time. Struggles past, troubles still to come. The day is nearly done. Will someone buy us some more time? Cloudy day in Los Angeles, cloudy day in LA. I'm no sort of evangelist, but I have something to say. Because life can strangely be forgiving to those who stay awake all night. Is telling you to give in. We'll try to sap your wills to fly. But whether I'm supposed to be here or just be soon forgotten noise is sort of based on what I see here and also on what I avoid. It's a very cloudy day in Los Angeles, and today we run out of time. Struggles past, troubles still to come. The day is nearly done. Will someone buy us some more time? Cloudy day in Los Angeles, cloudy day in LA. I'm a sort of evangelist, but there's something to say, something to say. Well, Clashing Games, nobody wants to debate me, frankly. The people who do are totally unqualified to. The people who would benefit, the community would benefit from me debating, won't debate me. Don't want to debate me. Insist that this isn't the sort of thing one debates about because they have a different system, right? My point is one system's correct, the others are not. But they don't want to argue under that frame of reference, so they're not going to want to debate me. They don't want to debate me, Clashing Games, 'cause they know it's just lashings all the same. After all, I am true, and I work harder than they do, and I understand things a lot better. So if I were to argue with somebody and they didn't agree with me, everybody would see that they were wrong, and that would lose them legitimacy, credibility, and then they would not be as strong as a voice in the typology community as they are. And that's why. And that's why. That's the message today. That's the message of why. What do I want to play? He's Gregory in disguise. He hates the lies. He wants to take them in. Always telling them. But every time he tries, they only run and hide. chance to yell at them until the bridge brings a new approach. Secretly he'll try to encroach upon the guilty. I can't remember the fucking song. I can't remember it. I gotta practice it. My bad, I'm sorry. Let me play a song I do remember, okay? When I was younger, it seemed that everything gleamed. I don't know what happened to me, but I've lost that sense of urgency, and I don't think that I'll ever see it again. If you follow my lead, you'll discover I'm loster than you, and you'll want to know the way right back at to wherever it was you thought you knew. And tomorrow will be just like today. I'll be lost then too. It's a matter of mood as much as a matter of will. And the things I do and the direction I point to still seem a part of me, though departedly. And I wonder if I'll ever see them again. Bum-ba-dee-da, ba-da-da-da-da, bum-ba-dee-da, da-da-do. Bum-ba-dee-da, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-dee-da, da-da-da. That's a nice, pleasant song. Let's do a cover. Let's do a cover that I already know will make sure that somebody other than I receive any of the few cents of revenue this video might make. If you play this cover, you will get copyright claimed. Which is kind of funny. It's like this is like a 3-hour stream, right? And I can play this cover and the whole stream gets copyright claimed. Presumably if I had any super chat money in the stream, then Billy Joel would get it for playing this song. So if this stream should go viral, actually now they allow you to edit out the offending section, which is kind of cool.
That is.
Yeah, you can auto edit out the offending section. Okay, Rachel, I wonder if when we get down to old junk, or nowadays can't be too sentimental, if you could scroll down for me. What's the matter with the clothes I'm wearing? Can't you tell that your tie's too wide? Maybe I should buy some old tap cars. Welcome back to the edge of jive. Where have you been hiding out lately, honey? You can't dress trash until you spend a lot of money, 'cause everybody's talking about the new sound funny, but it's still rock and roll to me. What's the matter with the car I'm driving? Can't you tell that it's out of style? Should I get a set of white wall tires? Are you gonna cruise the Miracle Mile? Nowadays you can't be too sentimental. Your best bet's a true baby blue Continental. Hot funk, cool punk, even if it's old junk, it's still rock and roll to me. It doesn't matter what they say in the papers, 'cause it's always been the same old scene. With every new band in town, and you can't get the sound from a story in a magazine aimed at your average teen. your money on a new set of speakers. You get more mileage from a cheap pair of sneakers. Next phase, new wave, dance craze. Anyway, still rock and roll to me. There's a new band in town and you can't get the sound from a story in a magazine aimed at your average teen. What's the matter with the crowd I'm seeing? Don't you know that they're out of touch? Should I try to be a straight A student? If you are, then you think too much. Don't you know about the new fashion, honey? All you need are looks and a whole lot of money. The next phase, new wave, dance craze. Anyway, it's still rock and roll to me. Everybody's talking about the new sound funny, but it's still rock and roll to me. Thanks. Now I'm going to play another cover. This one is called the cover I always play. Well, you might call me a rambling man, 'cause I do a lot of thumbing and a kicking can, but it won't do an answer good to call me names. My daddy wasn't Willie Woodrow. I wasn't born and raised in no ghetto, just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. I don't need no handout living, don't want any part of anything they giving. I'm proud and white, ain't got a song to sing. Well, I said a few things and I'll admit it. If you wanna get ahead, you gotta hump and get it. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. I'm gonna find me a wealthy woman in a line of work that don't take no diploma, 'cause I ain't got much to lose but lost the game. You might call me a good time fella, but I ain't no black and I ain't no yellow. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. I'll hand out living, don't want any part of anything they giving. I'm proud and white, ain't got a song to sing. Well, I said a few things and I'll admit it. If you wanna get ahead, you gotta hump and get it. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. Small town been around a little, and I like guitar and I like the fiddle, 'cause that's the kind of soul that can fan my flame. Blue-eyed Billy, feared and ready. I got to work just to be somebody. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. I don't want no handout living, don't want any part of anything they giving. I'm proud and white, ain't got a song to sing. Well, I said a few things and I'll admit it. If you want to get ahead, you gotta hump and get it. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. I said a few things and I'll admit it. If you want to get ahead, you gotta hump and get it. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. Well, I said a few things and I'll admit it. You wanna get ahead, you gotta hump and get it. Just a white boy looking for a place to do my thing. That's it. That's all from today. For today, from host Eric of the live stream playing challenge. You couldn't pay me enough money for a second wife. No, I don't. It would be a shorter answer to that. Even if I wanted a second wife, the answer would be no. I don't have enough money for a second wife. I barely earn enough money for this one. But that's okay, because you know why? People like you, Ayanna Cassidy, are real people who really care about me. And not somebody who sometimes comes in under a different name or something, you know. People like you in Clashing Games are truly people who love with the tenderness of moisture and the justice of truth. Praise the Lord. Amen. And Eric's right. Thus do we learn of goodbye. Thus do we now part. Adieu. Thus do I say sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, et bonjour. Now do I say aloha, not meaning hi, but bye. Now do I say salutations away, and have a nice day.